So, my name is Tim Errickson. I am the artistic director of the Boomerang Theater Company, and I get the pleasure this morning of chatting with Amy Crossman, writer and performer of The Great Divide. Not just The Good Divide.
Great.
No, it is The Great Divide, which is the best divide there probably could be. Tell me a little bit about The Great Divide. Like, I know what it is, but I think for people who are getting excited to come to the show, give them a little overview of like, what's the show? What is it?
It's a story about resilience and acceptance. It's a story about growing up in a lot of ways and taking responsibility and letting go as well. I guess a little bit more specifically, it follows a young woman's growth through one of her most significant romantic relationships that she's yet to experience and the sort of ups and downs of that. But I think she thinks she's in a rom-com, but the play is not a rom-com. It charts a lot of first adult things, I would say.
And we should also tell everybody that it is a one-person show.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's
just one person growing up.
Yeah. We say that it's not a rom-com, and it is not. However, it has very funny parts to it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Grief was sort of what the play was born out of in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. And if you can't have humor with that, then I think it's all too much. Yeah. I refuse to exist in a world where you can't laugh at it. I think it's very funny.
When you think about writing this play and getting ready to perform, going to rehearsal and performing this play, what's the most exciting thing about it for you?
I'm really excited to get a live audience involved with it. It is a play that relies heavily on the audience, not in the sense that there's really no audience participation, because I don't like that personally when I'm an audience member, but there is a really strong connection with the audience, a lot of direct address, a lot of asking questions, rhetorical or otherwise. I'm excited to see how that comes to life, both as the writer and as the performer, because it has been, I have workshopped this, I have had another actor workshop it, but I think it's something that really comes alive in that theatrical space. Like, it's a thing that for me needs to be a play. Like, it can't be a book or a poem or anything like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I will tag on to that because I was in the audience for, I think, one of the first showings of the complete thing. And I can attest to how connected the audience was to that character's journey and what they went through and the highs and lows. I mean, you say it wasn't audience participation, but I feel like we were so on stage with you, like so invested that it felt almost like audience participation, even though you weren't actually calling on us to do anything. We were just so leaning on the edge of our seats to go with you.
Yeah, that's my hope in it. And I think in the writing of it, something I've been saying for a long, long time is that the audience is the most important character of the play, which is an interesting challenge as a playwright, because I can't write the audience's experience, right? Like, the audience is going to have whatever experience they have. And so I have done my best to construct a play that kind of guides that experience. But as a performer, I'm selfishly really excited to see like what happens, what that dynamic is and how that changes from night to night.
When you think about the process so far of like initial idea, I know that you've workshopped it in a couple different places. You've had other people step into the role and sort of play it while you observed. Is there something that has stuck out to you as the most surprising that has come out of that experience for you?
I think I've been really pleasantly surprised by the amount of connection that this play has supported, be it between audience members or myself and an audience member, or myself and collaborators, or just like even me with me. It's just been a really like connective experience. Certainly, I mean, the humor I think is surprising. I will also say, as the playwright, it's pretty intentional. And I'm kind of both as an actor, as a writer, also just as a person, I'm like, if there's a joke, I want to take it, even if it's at like a really inappropriate moment. Like, I am the kind of person who laughs at funerals. It's just how I get through them. And so I think that part is surprising. I don't know if it's surprising to me because it is intentional, but I hope that it is helpful and healing and surprising to the audience.
That makes a lot of sense. And then the thing I want to talk to you about as we drill down through the Great Divide and past the Great Divide in a way is you talked really eloquently about why the Great Divide can't be anything other than a play. It is a communal experience, potentially, with audience and the performer. And what do you think makes a theater experience like that? Is there something that characterizes, and why do you say that it couldn't be anything else?
For me as a theater artist, the most important element of theater is the audience. And that comes from a lot of my training is in clowning, where it's really not about your experience as the performer, it's about the audience. Like, the audience tells us what's funny. the audience tells us it's beautiful. And I can come out and I can insist that something is hilarious, but if no one's laughing, well, that's on me, right? That's not on the audience. And so I think this play really relies on that, and the character and her development relies on the audience's experience of it, you know. So the text won't change from night to night, but I do imagine that the performance will, based on what the audience is bringing to the table. And when I go to see theater, I want to be the most important person in the room, or not just me, but like me as the audience. I want to feel like I am a necessary component to this, because even though I love theater, like my favorite kind of theater is a 90-minute no intermission. Like we live in a world where like it's like I want to go on to the next thing immediately. And so if you're going to require me to be there for 4.5 hours, which this play is not 4.5 hours long, I want to be very clear about that. In fact, it's getting shorter and shorter as we go along, which is great. I want to really feel like I need to be there. It's a story I need to hear, a story that I need to be moved by or changed by or be thinking about. Otherwise, like, yeah, like I could probably like read it. I could watch it on TikTok. Do you know what I mean? Like, not that I have TikTok because I'm old, but if I did.
Right. I totally get that. One of the things that you bring up that's super interesting to me, 2 summers ago, you were in a production of The Comedy of Errors for Boomerang in the summer of 21. You were. I don't know if you remember, but you were there.
I do.
One of the things that was so striking about your performance as one of the Dromios in Comedy of Errors was this idea you're talking about of the audience being a scene partner for you in elements of the play. I think that there were moments where you were, and that had obviously a little more direct address, maybe about the same amount of direct address as The Great Divide will have ultimately. Like there was a lot of communication where audiences were getting information through context, but also through exposition and sort of like setting the scene in a way. But I think that one of the things that was so striking about your performance in that, and why I think people are going to be really excited about The Great Divide, was your ability to ride that line between involvement and oversharing, where you were responsive to what the audience gave you, but did not anticipate or expect or count on them to give you something specific that you had planned. Oh, I'm going to do a bit when the audience goes ha ha ha, and because if they didn't go ha ha ha, then your bit was messed up. You were in the moment, if that makes any sense. And I think that speaks to your training, I think, right, as a clown.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, I think one of the big tenets of clown, as I have studied, there's a lot of different ways of studying it, but I've studied extensively with Chris Bays. So the way that Chris really kind of works into it is you are sort of in pursuit of what is fun to you as the performer. And I think the character in this play, in The Great Divide, is also in pursuit of that as well. And I think for me as an audience member, I'm more willing to go on that journey if I trust that the actor inside of it knows what they're doing, is safe, is going to take care of me as an audience member. I'm more willing to sit on my edge of my seat and lean in. But there is structure. It's not just like I'm going to do whatever I want. And I also think like that's where having a director really kicks in, because Scott Ebersold directed Comedy of Errors 2 years ago, and he's directing this play as well. You know, I remember in rehearsals for that, there was a bit where I had made the choice that I wanted to enter screaming. And I was like, I want to scream for 2 minutes. And he was like, 20 seconds. And I was like, 1 minute. And he was like, 20 seconds. And he was right. But I appreciated the space in rehearsal to play, right? And I think too, as a performer, like you can tap in pretty quickly to like who wants to be involved and who doesn't. You know, like the last show of Comedy of Errors, I came and a very good friend of mine sat like front row center. And I was like, well, you did this to yourself, man. Like, I'm going to fuck with you. And I did. And it was the only time in our run that I dropped a line. I just turned to my Antipholus and I was like, man, the line is gone. So you have to pick up the scene, because I don't remember what it was. Because I was like too busy having fun, like asking my friend to Venmo me. Yeah. Which made sense in the context of Comedy of Errors. I don't exactly remember how, but that is, I know the Shakespeare went out the window when I got Venmo involved.
Totally. In terms of The Great Divide and thinking about sort of its creation and its structure and why a one-person show, do you think, rather than a multi-character show?
Good question. Well, it was born out of an experience that I felt very, very lonely in. And I struggled to find resources that reflected back my experience. I also find one-person shows to be, when done well, or for me when they're done well, like to be really profound. Like I find it to be an opportunity to watch like a very virtuosic performer at play. And that's really exciting to me. And there was something about the isolation of the experience that inspired this play that I thought could be explored in this play. And it's a play about loss. And I think to watch one person go through that, to never see or hear any other characters, was important to the form of the story I wanted to be telling. And I also frankly wanted to study with Judy Gold, and she was teaching a solo performance class. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to write a solo performance then. And I did.
Judy Gold is the best. In thinking about creation of a one-person show, are there particular one-person shows that you have seen over the years that stand out to you as sort of touchstones for how you went about your work?
I think the one that everyone points to, especially if you're a woman, is going to be Fleabag, right? Which I did find to be really exciting. I have a slight preference for the TV show over the stage play, if I'm being honest. I think for me, solo performance requires a lot of heart. And when I see solo shows that don't have that heart, it's a big ask to watch one person on stage for a while. So the ones that for me have been really impactful over the years, Chris Gethard is a comedian, does a show called Career Suicide, which talks on similar themes, sort of from a different angle. I saw Alex Edelman's Just for Us a couple months ago, and I thought that was pretty revolutionary. These shows have to have heart, and they have to cost something. I'm not really interested in sitting back and watching someone talk about how great they are. I'm interested in like watching a person really struggle with their humanity. And I think that certainly exists in plays, but I think we bring the lens really in a solo show when it's just one person exploring all of those things. And I think there's many different ways of doing it, right? Like there are solo shows that people play different characters. That's not a show that I do, but I think the form is really interesting in that way as well. I
think it goes back all the way to, I mean, for theater nerds, right? Like one person got up on stage and then it was theater, and then two people got up on stage and then it was dialogue, right? Like it goes back all the way to the beginning of storytelling in a way.
Yeah, and I think that's really like what it is storytelling. I love telling stories. I love going to the Moth. It's like a really fun place to see stories.
No, that was great. That's perfect. And then this is my wrap-up question to you, because I think that it's a thing that we're all grappling with in a post-pandemic world, in a world in which a lot of our tour storyteller friends are on strike because they're not being paid and valued. What do you see as the role of the theater artist like in this moment, and what excites you about being a theater artist now?
It's a tough question,
because honestly, you could be anything in the world. You're a talented person, and you choose to put your energies and your efforts and your talents into doing this thing that is very unique and idiosyncratic and old-fashioned in some ways. And so like that's a really cool thing to do. And so I want to hear why it lights you up.
Well, I think it is a question that many theater artists throughout the years have grappled with. Like I think of Hamlet a lot with his advice to the players, right? Of like, why do we do the thing that we do? Or to hold the mirror up to nature is sort of that old adage, right? Shakespearean adage. I think that's part of it. I think about Thornton Wilder's Our Town at the end of Act 3, when Emily says to the stage manager, I'm going to butcher it, but like, do people ever realize how beautiful it all is every minute? And the stage manager goes, the saints and the poets, they do some. And so I think part of what I feel my job is to give people an opportunity to pause for a moment and to put down whatever's going on in their life for a moment in time and engage with something else. I think it's a really important job. I think it's a healing job. I think I, as a person, feel very much compelled to help and be of service to others. And I think that it's an important profession in that way. I also think the older I get, like the more perspective I have on it. And like, I'm not doing brain surgery. I'm not like actually saving lives, but I think that if I can do what I think I'm a theater artist to do what I can to help people feel less alone, because I think that is one of the most prevalent human experiences. And I think the only way that I have found to counteract that is to be in communion with people.
All right. And then we're going to get you out of here on this. Hope you're ready.
I'm ready.
If you were to give any words of wisdom or advice to anyone else who's thinking about making a solo show, what do you think it would be? Where would you tell them to sort of like pay attention?
Well, writing is hard. I think a community and accountability are really important, and I really struggle with both of those things a lot of the time. So I think finding a community that you can be accountable to, because writing a solo show is quite a lonely experience in many, many ways. And I think one of the reasons that this show exists in general is because of other people besides me. So I think my two pieces of advice would be like, just do it and find people around you who want to help you do it. In terms of finding a story that you think is worth telling, that to me sort of emerges over time. I had the idea for this play probably a year before I actually started writing it. And then I started writing something else and sort of had to redirect. So it was like a year and a half before I actually began writing like the first scenes of this play. And so I think allowing yourself a process too. I think that we do live in a culture that is like, well, you gotta like, especially as an actor performer, like people want so much from you so quickly. And for me to tell a story that is heartfelt, it takes time, and people write on different timelines. I know people who have turned out solo shows that are amazing in a matter of years or like 2 years. This has taken a longer process for me. And I think just allowing whatever that process is to be is important, because it gets quite loud in one's, or at least for me, it got quite loud in my brain writing this play with all of it, because it's like you have to deal with yourself, like how terrible, also like the best thing ever, but it's also terrible. And trying to be as gentle and generous with myself in that process. And that includes like now as we walk into rehearsals, it's not, and I'm sure it'll be true in performance as well. And I'm sure it's going to be true after this run is done. Like it's just as gentle and as kind as I can be to myself. I would encourage people who are thinking of doing that to be, because it can be very results oriented. And for me, that is not how I produce theater, how I can participate in it in any way.
Gentle and generous. I think that's probably a good spot to leave it.
Great.
So thank you very much. You're the best.
Cool.